Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Turnstile Never Enough. I feel like my approach with Turnstile is congruent but not fully aligned with the hardcore scene that's been divided on this band since Glow On. Probably since earlier, the hardcore scene can just be like that. I just really wish that their pummeling and raw hardcore side got as much acclaim as some of their dreamy atmospherics, at least in terms of the mainstream, or at least more consistently amplify both to the extreme. Maybe coming from atmospheric black metal, where I've heard that soft, loud balance all the time, especially in a year where Death Heaven actually returned to form, also acknowledging so much of the hardcore conversation is around the scene, and arguments that Turnstile turned in their cred for fame and now critical acclaim, but also we've got Never Enough, and there are a couple shifts behind the scenes that are worth noting. Will Yip is still here to ensure the grooves are as ragged and pummeling as ever, as is Dev Hynes from Blood Orange, plus the occasional feminine backing vocal coming from Faye Webster and Hayley Williams of Paramore, also A.G. Cook contributing production to a song, but I guess okay. But I was more concerned about the loss of both one of their founding guitarists, Brady Ebert, and producer Mike Elizondo, who's notable for scaling acts up to a cinematic level, so could this work without them? Well, you know, if this was just Glow On Part 2, I might be on board, but there's something about the alchemy that's not really sticking for me. Many have highlighted the extended ambient electronic and instrumental passages, which might be more engrossing if they've got more compositional direction or intriguing texture, or if they didn't occasionally just feel weirdly abortive, stopping in odd times, or if you could actually make out some of those guest contributions to cut through the mist. But I actually think the problem runs deeper. Maybe if the hardcore passages had tighter or more interesting guitar lines to drive those melodic hooks, instead of relying on some rather basic post-hardcore breakdowns, or swapping out for some 80s light funk trying to evoke the Police of all bands, along with some goopy psychedelia and dance diversions that didn't have enough direction or development to pay off properly. When the decent enough time is happening lands because of its pop-punk adjacent chords and structure, well yeah, at least it had more structure. That says something. Yeah, some of this is losing Elizondo, who would have ensured the dramatic payoff and hooks, instead of their frontman Brendan Yates taking on the majority of production duties, where he does a fine enough job. He was behind the boards on Glow On, but in front of the mic he also doesn't sound as visceral or potent to me. There's this real dazed, emotionally disconnected feeling in the album's vibe, from whenever the pitch-corrected synthetic layers creep over Yates' vocals, but especially when we get to the lyrics and content, where they've ascended to newfound heights and yet they feel unsatisfied, detached, it's never feeling enough, time passing ever faster, not helped but what appears to be a slow-motion breakup taking place in the haze of this album's scattershot progression. And you know, on some level, that kind of makes sense. I get why the dejected ennui might manifest in this sound. And in cuts like the title track, light design, SUNSHOWER, at least before that fluid outro that felt really oversold, where it landed a little better was on Lookout for Me with the compressed warp of the guitars and that two-step dance outro. When the hooks actually cut through, I think some of them are legit great, at least compared to the weirdly jaunty 80s vibe of I Care and SEEIN Stars, the latter of which is only being saved by its guitar solo. But when I found Turnstile underpowered before on Glow On, pretty much across the board, especially given heavier music that strike a similar balance to me that I've heard, going even softer and more diffuse in the compositions and themes while retracing old steps, I'm sorry, it leaves the album a lot less impactful. Not saying it's bad, it's pleasant enough as it washes over you. I'd still call it quite good for what it is if you're willing to meet it there, but you know, I'm gonna say it, if there's an album that lives up to its title, for better and for worse, probably this one. It's absolutely worth a listen, but if it doesn't stick, look, I'm not gonna say I didn't warn you. That's all. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I know that this opinion is the equivalent of throwing a Molotov cocktail into some very heated discourse. Turnstile has inspired that, especially around the hardcore community and, well, everyone else. Not gonna lie, with this album, I kind of get it, even more so than Glow On, but hey, if you got comments, leave them down there below. Have fun. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you all want to get involved in helping support the channel, get albums on my schedule when it reopens in July, or just yell at me directly on my Discord, I'm going to point you towards Patreon and YouTube memberships. Once again, don't feel obligated. Really tough times out there, I understand, but the option is available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.